Well, this is a big step backward for the health of Israel's democracy. And to that extent, it's a big problem for the United States. We want Israel, which is one of the only well functioning democracies in the Middle East, to continue to improve its democracy and not to move towards the authoritarian model. This is a step backwards because it takes away one of the important checks and balances in the Israeli system, which is the judiciary has a check on the executive branch. Unlike our system, where we have three branches of government or checks and balances among them, there's really only two branches vying with each other, the executive and the judiciary, because one party usually controls the executive and the legislative in Israel. It's also very suspicious because this decision will potentially help Netanyahu personally as he stands trial for fraud. And this could enable him, even if convicted, to continue as the prime minister. It also is backed by some of the ultra religious, ultra national members of his party, some of whom may want to do more in the West Bank and the occupied territories that the court might not let them do were it not for these changes to the judiciary.
David, let me push back then. Is it still a democracy if you have a prime minister who is under indictment, who is facing trial, who could actually pardon himself?
Sure, Israel is still a democracy, and it will continue to be a democracy, even if all of these changes get made to the judiciary. But what I think is that it is eroding some of the protections that they have, and it weakens it as a democracy. And it certainly is precarious to have an executive who can continue as prime minister even after being convicted of crimes. That's problematic. Certainly, most democracies observe the rule that no one is above the law, and this would, in some ways, put him above the law.
David, we hear so much about the will of the people, but these demonstrations have been going on for months. Tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people have taken to the streets, the military saying it will not obey orders. What happens, I guess, when the apparent will of the people seems to fall on deaf ears?
Well, that's what we're facing now, and it's a standoff. Those are gripping footage that you have of protesters. In some ways, they've choked off some of the roads in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem. They've stopped normal life. There are many strikes going on. Even the military may be compromised in terms of its strength because some reservists are not going to participate. So these are all things that are very problematic for Israel to be a functioning democracy. They'll get past this, but it's a matter of how long and what compromises will be made for both sides to agree.
Is there any other way to look at this other than a power grab by Bibi Netanyahu? And I guess the question is, if he were not facing legal problems, would the United States and those opposed to what is happening in Israel be looking at this differently?
Well, it's not just for Netanyahu, right? It's also the ultra nationalists, ultra religious parties or members of his coalition government who want this, and this benefits them too. So it's partly Netanyahu's wish, but he may not be able to control these members in his party who really don't like that the judiciary doesn't let them do certain things. I think it would be less suspicious, though, if Netanyahu were not contemporaneously facing a trial and potential conviction for fraud, and that makes it even more problematic. But Israel is trending this way with the ultra nationalist, ultra religious parties gaining ground, gaining power, and wanting to roll back some of the democratic protections.
David, as they say, money talks. What should the Biden administration do? And the old phrase that politics stop at the water's edge may not be working here because there is talk that Bibi Netanyahu will be invited to address Congress. So what should the Biden administration do?
Well, I think what President Biden has done so far is the right thing. He had talks with Netanyahu. He expressed very directly his disappointment with these changes to the judiciary, that with the erosion of rule of law that seems to be happening in Israel. And he made some public statements, but he's privately probably delivered an even more forceful message. But it's also important for an ally like Israel that we not be disrespectful to their leader, we not be disrespectful to their government. So we have to walk this in a very sensitive way to the situation, asserting our persuasion and our influence over Israel, but not disrupting our strong, important alliance.
David Tafuri, a former foreign policy advisor for former President Barack Obama. David, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.